This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, hello there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, on March 14th, E-I-E-I-O, 40 years ago, the NCAA tournament was rushed on attack. E-I-E-O, we're upset here and upset there. There was another upset on March the 14th. There were three major upsets and three major buzzer beaters. That is kind of strange. You know it's true. On March 14th, 1981, E-I-E-I-O. All kidding aside, March 14th, 1981 was one of the strangest days in NCAA tournament history because not one, not two, but three massive upsets happened. And in a famous March 2011 article on NCAA.com, Greg Johnson indicated that March 14th, 1981 was a date that defined March Madness. So going into the 1981 March Madness, there were key teams. There was Virginia, DePaul, LSU, and Oregon State being placed in as the one seeds and all that. Basically, you know, March Madness in 1981 was not what it is today. Like only 48 teams qualified. What happened is the top four seeds in each region got buys into the second round. And then, of course, and then four playing games. Those teams will play in the regional quarterfinals and then regional semis and finals. For example, in the East Regional with Virginia and Ralph Sampson, Villanova was the 9th seed. They took on number 8 Houston. Number 5 Virginia Commonwealth took on number 12 Long Island. Number 6 BYU took on number 11 Princeton, and number 7 Georgetown took on James Madison. The winners of those four playing games, Villanova, VCU, BYU, and James Madison, would move on to face the top four seeds. As Virginia, Tennessee, UCLA, and Notre Dame were all waiting for their opponents and all that. In the East region, Virginia got to the Final Four by beating BYU. In the West region, North Carolina took down Kansas State 82-68. And yes, Michael Jordan was on that team. No, sorry, Michael Jordan was not on that team. He was a freshman in 82 when he got that winning shot. Indiana beat St. Joseph's in the Mid-East region, and LSU beat Wichita to move on to the Final Four. The Final Four was Indiana taking down North Carolina for the championship, and Virginia beating LSU. This would actually be the last time a third-place game ever happened in the NCAA, that there would be a third-place game. Ironically, of course, this was the tournament in 1981 where just hours before the championship game, President Reagan had been shot by John Hinckley, who was trying to impress Jodie Foster and all that. And if you watch that American Dad episode, basically it's kind of bullshit because they're saying that, if John Hinckley, if Martin Scorsese wasn't filled up on coke and basically he would not have made Taxi Driver, which would have meant that John Hinckley would not have seen the movie and obsessed over the prostitute of Heart of Gold, Jodie Foster, who was only 12 years old that time when it was filmed. And he would not try to press her by shooting at Ronald Reagan. And then Stan Smith said that basically Reagan would not have won the 1984 re-election because, he survived a bullet and all that, and probably would have been Mondale. I don't believe that for 1 second because, Reagan's successor could have been George Bush Sr. And Bush Sr. might have been in Mondale for the 1984 spot because, remember, George Bush Sr. was on the ticket as VP alongside Reagan in 1984. So maybe Bush Sr. But anyway, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so Saturday, March 14th, 1981 happened. There were three major second-round tournament upsets. Number 1, DePaul, who basically always seemed to be doing well in tournaments, but basically couldn't get to the big one, as Ray Meyer, who was the legendary coach of the DePaul Blue Demons for 4 decades, kept trying to get his team into the finals. Number 1, DePaul took on St. Joseph's. And St. Joseph's is a Philadelphia area school and is more well known, actually, for having alumni such as Delonte West and Jameer Nelson. So anyway, DePaul looked good and all that in Dayton, Ohio. The Hawks rallied for 1 point, and DePaul guard Skip Dillard was fouled with 13 seconds left. He was a good free throw shooter, but somehow he missed the front of a 1-1. Now, to explain the free throw scenario, in college basketball, remember they play by halves, not by quarters. If a team hits a certain amount of fouls in the half, I think it's 7, then the players go to the line. Well, if you have your 7th, 8th, and 9th foul of the half basically is a 1-1, which means if you shoot, and if you hit the front end of your first free throw, you get a second one. Otherwise, if you miss your first free throw, then you got a problem. And basically, things can happen. And your 10th free throw, 10 foul per quarter, per half, basically you're on your own. Like you shoot it, you get 2 free throws regardless. So he missed the front end of a 1-1. St. Joseph's got the rebound and basically passed the ball around without calling a timeout. Basically, DePaul guarded incorrectly, and John Smith was under the bucket, uncontested. And basically, he got a layup with 2 seconds left, which enabled the Hawks of Jim Lynam to shock DePaul 49-48. Here's the call.
St. Joseph has the ball back. I think DePaul was expecting to call timeout, but St. Joseph pushed it up the floor. 7 seconds. Look at this. Look at this. They win. St. Joseph wins. Unbelievable.
That was a shocking moment because obviously, to have him wide freaking open and all that. DePaul, what are you thinking, man? So basically, DePaul fumbled that to St. Joseph's. St. Joseph's had to be Creighton to get into the game against DePaul. St. Joseph's actually shocked everyone by beating Boston College in the regional semis before Indiana crushed the tar out of them. So, yeah. So, later on, there was a massive game. The number 1 seed in the West region was Oregon State, who was 26-2, who basically won 26 straight games. They took on Kansas State at Pauley Pavilion, home to UCLA. Oregon State had an 11-point lead. However, Rolando Blackman, who was one of the best Kansas State players of all time, Michael Beasley, led the Wildcats back with a nice run. Kansas State and Oregon State basically stalled with the ball. Now remember, this is before the shot clock was introduced in 1986. So basically, yeah, Oregon State missed the front end of a 1-1. Kansas State had to hold for the last shot. And Blackman, who was double teamed, drilled a fall-away 17-footer from the right baseline to shock Oregon State and send the Beavers home unhappy, as Oregon State basically was a fantastic school in the West Regional. Kansas State had to beat San Francisco to get to that game against Oregon State. And they beat Oregon State. They beat Illinois before North Carolina got them. Here's the call of that one.
7 seconds. The shot put up, no good. And Kansas State, out of the Big 8, has knocked off the Oregon State Beavers at Pauley Pavilion.
That was a shocking upset to be had. But nothing contends with this upset. Now, of course, the third upset is basically close to my heart because you know who I cheer for, is the Razorbacks. So in 1981, 4 years before I was born, Arkansas would take on Louisville in the Midwest Regional. And I do believe, let's see, get the Midwest. So Arkansas had to win against Mercer to face the number 4 seed Louisville. Now, a lot of people are like, thought it was a number one upset. Well, an upset is an upset, but there's a major reason why it's called an upset, even though the 5 took down the 4, and Arkansas would go on to get pasted by LSU. It was because Arkansas was the defending national champion. They were the 1980 national champions, and people thought they could repeat. So in Austin, Texas, Arkansas took on Louisville. Louisville got a bucket on a jumper by Derek Smith. And Eddie Sutton, the legendary coach who died last year, called timeout with 5 seconds left. He said, get the ball to this Reed. And Reed dribbled to half court and launched a 49-foot shot that beat the buzzer and switched to the net. And Arkansas sent the national champions and Denny Crum, that's his name, out of the tournament 74-73. Here's the call of that one.
Game at Pauley Pavilion, but we've got a 1-point ball game going on in Austin, Texas, so let us go back to Marv Albert and Bucky Waters. Right there, Brian. Time running down. Arkansas having trouble getting down. US3 with the swing. It's on. It's on. US3. Let's see. Did they say it's out? It's all over. Arkansas has defeated Florida. US3 hitting from half court. And it's a 1-point incredible victory for the Razorbacks.
That was just amazing. I mean, to have not 1, not 2, but 3 massive upsets happen within minutes of each other. It's like critical. It's like, wow, can you believe it? So yeah, the 81 tournament basically, with all those upsets, that basically got the TV ratings higher and higher, saying that anything can happen. Anyone can get an upset. UMBC can tell you that with their big win over Virginia in 2019. So yeah, great time to be an NCAA basketball fan in 1981 and all that. And that was the last time NBC would broadcast the Final Four. CBS has had a monopoly on it ever since. Well, CBS launched Turner Sports, but whatever. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adu.